Baltic 21 has adopted 9 lighthouse projects with budgets ranging from 2 to 4 million euros, funded mainly from EU. Our first projects focused on the Baltic Sea from different aspects. And the 9th theme we are now going to hear more about, and I transfer the word to Director Christine Jakobsson from the Baltic University program. Please, the floor is yours.
The Baltic Sea has many similarities with the Great Lakes region of the United States and Canada, as we can see. One most important factor is that there's a very limited water turnover. And also we have cold water and ice cover during part of the year, which of course affects the situation to a large extent. At the same time, we have high human densities in parts of the drainage basin. If we go further on and look at one of them, which is the Baltic Sea, for example, eutrophication, for many decades actually one has been debating, is it nitrogen or is it phosphorus that's most important? One has said that for coastal areas it definitely is both. But at the same time, recent investigations have shown that nitrogen fixation in the sea itself is much more important than we thought previously. Regarding the state of the Baltic Sea, we have about 780,000 tons of nitrogen and 36,000 tons of phosphorus that enter the Baltic Sea every year. And a third of the seabeds, as you can see the dark purple on the map below, are actually anoxic. They're without oxygen. And this is very serious. Also, during the last 50 years, the Secchi depth, or the depth that you can see, how far you can see in the water, it's been reduced by about 4 meters. This project is a new course package on sustainable development in agriculture and ecosystem health, and it's for university level. And it's developed in cooperation with 2 different networks. The Baltic University program that I represent, which is a network, I'll come to that in a moment, of about 220 universities, and also the Environment Baltic network. If we look at the Baltic University program, this is a network of 220 universities in the Baltic Sea region and the drainage basin. It's 14 countries. And in each country we have a regional center that helps us coordinate the work that's going on in the country. We have about 1,500 teachers, researchers that have contributed during the years. And approximately 9,500 students study our courses every year. So it's quite large actually. And this whole network is coordinated by the Secretariat at Uppsala University, where I work. Our main focus is on sustainable development, environmental protection, and democracy. Well, what do? Our main focus, of course, is on education, research, and information, but we also are involved in outreach activities and applied projects. The pictures you can see on the right-hand side here, they represent an audio conference on democracy in Ukraine, the top picture, and the lower one is a role game that's called the Amoeba, where they're trying on different roles of how to put forward sustainable development. It's a students' conference, both cases. We have different types of courses, both basic undergraduate courses, specialized master courses, and also competence development for professionals. Excuse me. They're interdisciplinary, problem-oriented, they're based on research, they're interactive, and we usually give them in English, but in some cases countries have chosen to translate the materials, and then it has been possible for students to study in their own national language. The countries that participate in this project are Belarus, Canada, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Kaliningrad, St. Petersburg in Russia, Slovakia, Sweden, Ukraine, and the United States. And then we're going to say a bit about the next network, and I'd like to point to my 3 colleagues over at the far end of the room, Leif Nordgren to the left here, Val Beasley, and Thomas Gillespie. They represent Environment Baltic, the other network.
Yes, thank you, Christine.
This is Leif Nordgren from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences.
I think that I will stand up, and I think that you can hear me when if I'm trying to speak clearly. Together with my American colleagues, we would like to give some examples, some very important examples, historical examples and present examples of animal health issues in the Baltic Sea region and in the Great Lakes region. And you know, in both countries, the environmental interest started about 35 years ago. And at that time, it was a very clear focus on industrial point sources. For instance, pulp and paper mill industry in Baltic Sea and the same in the Great Lakes. And what often was reported from laymen at that time, that was fishermen, for instance, that was very poor fish health. And these are only some examples how fish could look like 35 years ago when the alarm clock was calling. We had this is a perch, as you can see, present both in Baltic Sea and in the Great Lakes. And you see that this is a very, very malformed perch. We had a very high incidence of this type of perch all along the Baltic coastline and also in the Great Lakes. This is another example. This is a pike where you can see very huge tumors. And tumors were not only external, as you can see here, there was also a very high incidence of liver tumors. And also today we have a high incidence of liver tumors in fish in the Baltic Sea in certain areas. As I was saying, we will share this presentation and bring up some examples that we think are of significance, that we know are of very high significance. So I leave the word now to Val Beasley here for some examples from the Great Lakes.
I'll just mention two. One is here. Let's start with this one. This is the problem of DDT, the persistent organochlorine pesticide, which was used very widely beginning after World War II, and which was an endocrine disruptor which interfered with the formation of eggshells, and under the weight of the mother who was basically incubating her eggs, the eggs would collapse. And the species, the fish-eating birds, were declining like crazy. And our old bald eagle became an endangered species under the pressure of that pesticide. In the middle here you have a cormorant that's contaminated with dioxin-related compounds. And this causes, among other syndromes, developmental abnormalities, endocrine disruption. And of course, a bird like this is not going to be able to feed. This is a bird who's more or less cared for in captivity. Now these are examples of success stories. Some of these compounds were recognized in the United States as a problem. Initially, others were recognized in the Baltic Sea countries as a problem, especially Sweden. And together we have learned from one another. In the case of the United States, we had progressive environmental laws in the 70s. Now we've fallen behind, and we're not at the point anymore. Fortunately, we have a partnership with countries in the Baltic that are pushing us along. Maybe eventually we can jointly push things forward.
I can mention that in Sweden we had about 50 pairs of breeding sea eagles during the early 70s. 50 pairs of breeding sea eagles. Today, the eagle population has recovered. So today we have about 1,600 pairs. So it's a tremendous improvement. And the same is also true for the seals. The Baltic Sea, you don't have any seals in the Great Lake, but I think that the seal is such an important animal in the Baltic Sea. We have 3 species of seals in the Baltic Sea. We have the ring seal, we have the harbor seal, and we have the grey seal. And during 100 years ago, we had approximately 300,000 individuals in the Baltic Sea. During the early 70s, we had about 10,000 left. And that was because of poor reproduction outcome, because of PCB exposure. Today, all 3 species has recovered, so we have about 50,000 seals today in the Baltic Sea, an estimation. So these, as I was saying, 2 good examples how man can influence by legislation, take actions to use of chemicals, pesticides, etc., to improve the environment.